You're listening to a podcast by the Center for Action and Contemplation. To learn more, visit cac.org.
Greetings. I'm Jim Finley.
And I'm Kirsten Oates.
Welcome to Turning to the Mystics.
Welcome, everyone, to Season 11 of Turning to the Mystics, where we're turning to the philosophy of Gabriel Marcel. And I'm here with Jim to discuss his first session. Welcome, Jim.
Yes, good. Yeah, good to be together again.
I loved the first session. Thank you so much. And you were really trying to set the tone and offer up the vision of Marcel. You always help us understand these mystics tend to have a vision aspect and a path aspect. And in this first session, you're really helping us get an insight into the vision of Marcel.
That's correct. That's right.
And where you started was, you said what makes Marcel accessible is that he's inviting us to become more aware of the quality of our awareness. And I wanted to just dig a little deeper into this idea of awareness. Because when I think about awareness, I'm thinking about, like right now, I can be aware of what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, the temperature in the room. I could be aware of, I'm a little hungry. What is this awareness that Marcel's talking about?
Yes. He's making a distinction. The way he phrases it, is between primary and secondary reflection. So primary reflection is we're just aware of what's consciously, factually obvious and true. So for example, right now it's 5 minutes till 10, or right now it's a certain date, or right now I need to turn the heat up in the room, or right now my cell phone there's that awareness. Secondary awareness is the awareness of realizing the inadequacy of primary awareness as being adequate to live by. And we become aware of its inadequacy by being established in secondary awareness of presence. The depth of our presence is not reducible to a set of facts. So it's in that meditative, reflective, interior state that we acknowledge primary awareness, which is the proper realm of science, the problematic, the objective, it's real. But in terms of the quality of my sense of who I am, about life, about presence, about the beautiful, about the things we seek to live by that gives meaning to our life, the quality is this secondary awareness, which is a reflective, meditative state of being more present to ourselves and to others.
That's helpful. So the awareness he's talking about is this reflective, meditative state, and that state reveals the inadequacy of this primary consciousness.
That's right. So even right now, even what we're doing right now, we could just say, he talks about the awareness of our awareness and just move on.
Yes.
And we say, no, that doesn't work. What did we just say?
Yeah.
What's it mean? So he's constantly inviting us to slow down, to experientially step into the depth of the actual presence of ourselves here, exploring the quality of our awareness. So he always has this experiential immediacy about him that opens out onto mystery.
That's helpful. And so this is the tricky territory, because the more I ask you to define awareness, I'm actually inviting you into primary reflection and the problematic. So there's this awareness he's talking about is in the realm of mystery.
That's right. It's like asking a poet to define or to explain in conceptual terms what the poem means. Or again, the example that we used earlier, when two people love each other, one says to the other, I love you. They don't say define your terms. Like, where did you read that? Let me write that down. I had no idea. And so it's this interior language of lovers, of poets with a child and so on, like Richard Rohr, how to turn information into transformation. And the transformation is the qualitative deepening of our attentiveness to the presence of ourselves in the moment that we're exploring, which is really sheds light on the interior depth dimensions of ourselves, of others, really the depth dimension of life itself.
And this isn't to say the realm of primary reflection isn't necessary or it's just inadequate to give us access to meaning to the discovery of who we really are.
That's exactly right. So it's not irrelevant what time it is we started the session. It's relevant because I wasn't aware of it. I would have shown up to be here, you know. And when I go to the grocery store, it's not irrelevant when I get there what I came to get, because I have something. What am I going to have for dinner? So it isn't that it's irrelevant at all. It's just that we now get stuck at that level as if we're a function, just a series of functions, and losing function to the standpoint that we lose a sense of presence. And also, we're losing a sense of what we can adequately explain by defining it. And we lose a sense of what we can't explain because it's not explainable. It's not definable. Like love is not ultimately explainable. It's not ultimately definable. But it's not irrelevant because it's not definable.
Yeah.
It's beyond what can be defined. And so this is this philosophical, poetic language that bears witness to these dimensions of ourselves, because he says it must really come to the realm of thought. There must be a way of thinking it that doesn't reduce it to an object, but it allows us to experientially reflect like we're doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the language of mystics. It's the words of Jesus. It's the words of lovers, of poets, the cries of the poor. It's this kind of experiential interior depth dimension of the presence of ourselves, of others, and of all things. And also that we're present, and we sense that we're present, subsisting in a presence. That's what we're going to be moving towards, the thou dimension. See, this boundaryless. So that's becoming aware of the quality of our awareness.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. So that final step you just took, which is there's a quality of presence that opens up onto that we're existing inside of a presence, or we're being co-presenced, or yeah.
And so here's a core theme of this vision aspect. So the problematic or the objective, we're saying, is that which is dualistically other than ourself. It's a problem we want to solve. And examples we were using is our roof is leaking or the car won't start, or so it's a problem. Next, we seek a method to solve the problem, to get the answer. Also in mathematics is a problem. How do I get the answer to this math problem? And then once we solve the problem or get the answer, we're done, we move on. And that's important. How to get the car started, because you needed to go to work. He said, but with presence, it's different. Because he said, what happens then in secondary reflection in the person is whatever I turn towards, and turning towards it, I realize that who I am, with the very presence of myself, is included in what I'm turning towards. This is mystery. So when I ask, what is love? It's me and my capacity for love, my desire for love, my gratitude for love that's asking, what is love? When I ask, what is consciousness? It's me and my own consciousness asking, what is consciousness? And so consciousness and love and presence aren't problems, they're mysteries. That here's the key to Marcel, we were saying. It's not reductionistically a mystery in that everything is reduced to my subjective opinion. Everything includes me, and that it's reducible to my subjective opinion or my attitude or it's the opposite. It includes me when I ask what is consciousness, and that my very self is included in the mystery of consciousness. It isn't just that I'm asking what is my feelings of love, my experiences of love, but rather my very self extends out into and is woven into the mystery of love itself. And ultimately, he's going to say it's woven into the mystery of being, and he's going to ultimately say that it's infinite. That my very presence extends out into and is woven into the presence of God, whose infinite presence is woven into me as myself. And so that's that expansive vision of Gabriel Marcel, which is the vision of religious consciousness. It's the vision of all the mystics, but he's exploring it as philosophy.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And we'll keep coming back to that because that's a big concept to unpack. And Gabriel Marcel says that the pathway to unpacking that, or the pathway to becoming more aware of our awareness or more present to this presence, it's supported by a kind of attitude. And you read from a quote of Marcel's, and it's on page 2 of the book we're using, The Philosophy of Gabriel Marcel by Kenneth Gallagher. And it's in the second paragraph that starts with, to gloss over this aspect, and it's the last couple of sentences. So you said, Jim, that the attitude of interrogation is at the same time an attitude of listening. And the manner of listening is strangely tranquil, unafraid, patient, and expectant. And I'd like to just dwell a little bit on those words that he offers us, the quality of those words, if you wouldn't mind helping us unpack them a little bit.
Let's take these moments where this awareness of which he speaks is happening. For example, the example we used in the midst of nature is sitting in the presence. We're given over to the beauty of a sunset that's giving itself over to us. Or the quietness that's evoked in us in an art museum, where we quietly move and sit with each piece, and so on. Or the pause between two lines of a poem. It's strangely tranquil because we're resting in it. It isn't like we're off somewhere else. We're not trying to figure it out so we can get on to the next thing. We're not trying to get on to anything else at all. It's a certain kind of inner tranquility that comes over us in the presence of the sunset or the friend or the sound of the rain or whatever it is that evokes it. It's like a pausing in sequential time to be present, and it brings with it a certain sense of interior peace or tranquility.
Which, Jim, doesn't mean you're not active, because I know in past seasons too, you've talked about also when you're called into a particular kind of work, like if you're called to be a teacher or you're called to be someone fighting for justice, like you can have that inner tranquility.
That's right. And that's where we get into the path part. In other words, it is in these moments of this awareness that we then say, well, then how do I habitually stabilize this awareness in my passage through time and the quality of my presence to how I'm serving the community, or I'm serving this person, or I'm present to this animal, or I'm true to life, sitting at the deathbed of the dying loved one. I have to carry it through this pause of a kind of a timeless attentiveness. A pause in sequential time needs to be lived in time. And therefore, in the midst of the rise and the fall of my activity, hopefully I do so in an underlying interior groundedness in the presence that's sustaining me in the rise and fall of the activity that I'm in. It's another big thing for Marcel. And real life, too. I think it's so true.
That's really helpful. So these moments that we can pause and really notice this experience, and then the path is how we might carry it through. So
that's right.
I see how.
And the next thing, it's unafraid. This is why I say God is a presence that protects us from nothing, even as God unexplainably sustains us in all things. In the arms of the beloved, in the setting sun, lying in the dark, listening to our breathing, whatever it is, a fear has no foundations. It's just a kind of a quiet presence. And I'm so woven into the presence, so woven into me, there's no basis for fear in it.
And that's where death tips over into the realm of mystery.
That's exactly right. This is going to be when he talks about love, he talks about, we know we've loved someone when we've seen in them that which is too beautiful to die. Likewise, he would say we've learned to love ourselves when we realize that in us is too beautiful. Our body dies, but who we know ourselves to be in this depth dimension is immortal. It's the eternality of ourself. There were manifestations of an eternal presence that never passes away, that's endlessly woven into all that's endlessly passing away. See, that's the mystery where time and eternity keep touching each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful. Patient is the next word.
Yeah, I'm patient because what's the rush? In other words, where am I going to go?
It's infinite.
I'm patient. Yeah, and then I think in meditation, I think that's why we sit still. We don't sit still to settle in. We sit still, there's no place to go. That everything I could ever hope for is in the very depth dimension of this place I'm in right now, to be present. In Buddhism, there's statues of the Buddha seated, a lotus posture. One hand is on one knee with his palm upward. The other one is touching the earth. See, he claims the place that he's sitting, like I'm very present. And so it has that patience about it. There's a kind of a quietness. And really, I think it's the patience of the eternality of the present moment. I like Teresa of Avila. She talks about patience obtains all things. Because very, very soon now we'll all be dead. But we'll all be dead, and that will be an unveiled oneness with the infinite love that's quietly giving itself to our heart. When we sit here, so time and eternity are intermingled in this patience, to be patient this way. And expectant, the last one. Sometimes this richness we're speaking of is very profound. I mean, it's very, there's moments like that sometimes. But usually it's very, very subtle. And here's the point. We sense its endlessness. We're expectant of yet even more layers of unexplained richnesses are yet to come. I'm in an arc of an unfolding expectancy, and I'm in the midst of the expectancy of endless enrichment. It's inexhaustible. I'm in the very midst of that which cannot be exhausted. See? And I'm in the midst of it, and it's in the midst of me.
The expectant makes me think of it's kind of the opposite of clinging. So rather than I found it, I've got it, I can cling to it, I remain expectant that it can deepen and go on forever.
Rollo May, in existential psychotherapy, he says, I'm having the experience that every experienced clinician has had many times. I'm looking over the notes of a patient that I'm going to see in a minute that I've never met, their diagnosis on the DSM and all of that, and depression, anxiety, whatever it is. He said, but when they come walking into the room, I'm surprised. You don't look like your diagnosis. That is, he said, there's no such thing as the foreseeability of an encounter with a person. The etymology of the word surprise is I'm taken from above in the presence of the person that transcends the diagnosis that they're working on. And that's the expectancy. And sometimes then you get used to being surprised. You're like a quietly, habitually surprised person. You're habitually taken from above by the miracle of the incomprehensible stature of standing up and sitting down this way. You get ever more refined in this kind of sensitivity.
I love that.
Yeah.
What was the word? To be an ongoing surprised person? I like it.
That's right. You're endlessly, quietly surprised.
Endlessly surprised. Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. Yeah. We're trying to, even in going through those words, Jim, there's a kind of way we're going deeper into the words, but we're not entering that realm of the problematic or the primary consciousness. As you deepen us into the words, it's because you're speaking out of that deeper place. And that's what Marcel's really trying to help us get to.
All the while, the problematic is still there. It's life. And by the way, the problematic has its own surprise, because when we're looking for an answer and we finally get it, we're delighted and surprised. Like, wow, my car starts. Or, wow, 2 + 2 equals, oh God, it equals 4. But the surprise is momentary until we move on to the next problem, we get surprised. But this now we're speaking of it's not momentary because we solved something. It's like a momentary realization of the eternality of the present moment. It's a subtlety of, St. Augustine once said about time, we all know, he said, I know what time is until you ask me to explain what it is. I can't explain time. So it's like that. It's like a self-evident intimations of the unexplainable. Mm-hmm. It's like two people who love each other talking about love. Neither one would claim they can adequately define their love. But it doesn't mean they're confused.
Yes.
Rather, they're in the presence of that which is undefined and undefinable, which gives meaning to everything that they do. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so subtle, this difference, because even though I'm asking you to further define each of these words, you're not defining them in the realm of the problematic, you're defining them in the realm of mystery. And that's, I think, what you were saying earlier about how thought can get infused in that realm of mystery. So when I ask you, tell us more about tranquil, you say something that takes us deeper into that experience of the tranquil.
That's right. Marcel points out, he said, there's something about thought that tends to want to keep us in the problematic. There's just something about thought that has us asking a question that we expect to find an answer. That's why I like this quote from Thomas Merton, where he said, when people first get involved in the interior life, they have many questions, and they try to get answers to their questions, which is well and good. But as they get into it, here's where it gets Marcelian, like Marcel. As they get into it, they discover here all along, here God's the one asking the question. And it's not just that they don't know the answer to God's question, they don't understand the question. And that's humility. That's this interiority. If we're just patient and then sit with it, there's like this enrichment of the qualifying deepening of the quality of our presence, subsisting in this presence, this presencing itself as who we are right in that moment, sitting here like this.
That theme of humility is common across many of the mystics we looked at, and I did want to read the quote you had from Marcel, which is in chapter 1, The Winding Path, and it's in the paragraph that starts on page 5. Now Marcel declares that at the origin of philosophy there must be an attitude of humility, of ontological humility. So I might get you to unpack that word for us and help us understand ontological humility.
Yeah. The word ontology means being.
Mm-hmm.
And so being for Marcel is like the infinite mystery of reality itself, the infinite presence of presence itself. And God is going to point out that ultimately it's clear that this being of which he speaks is God. But he's trying to stay free from any doctrinal formulation. He's trying to see like the presence of God in the infinity of life itself.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't just that I'm in the presence of God and that God's present to me, but rather it isn't that I'm in the presence of God and that I'm in a relationship with God and God's in a relationship with me, but it's realizing this, that God's relationship with me is the reality of me.
Mm.
That's mystery. And then we're humbled. Like the rains fall from our hands, we don't know what to make of it. That my very person is the very manifestation of the unmanifested presence of God. And I'm humbled by it. Never humiliated, but endlessly humbled with amazement, like I don't know what to make of it.
Beautiful. I think for those of us who were given a really poor image of God, like as a person, that as a man with a white beard, or, that somehow we were infused with that image, Marcel's just a breath of fresh air, approaching it from this philosophical standpoint. It's really helped me to rid myself completely of those kind of images that a lot of us got when we were young.
Yeah. And when you really listen, I've said in the Christian dispensation, but this is true of all the world religions, that's what they say, that no idea of God is God. Every idea of God's infinitely less than God. God's not reducible to any idea. But it's really in the realms of love and in the realms of presence that it passes beyond. It's just like Gabriel Marcel is going to say, you can't define yourself either. You're not definable. Mm-hmm. You are not reducible to your idea of yourself or to life. And therefore, Marcel kind of liberates us from those kind of impoverished or claustrophobic things that are kind of sadly foolish in a way. To open up to that, we're in the presence of that which evokes a sense of awe or a sense of amazement or immense gratitude that we cannot and don't need to explain. Mm-hmm. But we can intimately realize what we can't explain. And that's Marcel. That's Jesus, and that's the mystics.
And we find it in reality itself.
We do. Because this is reality itself. Mm-hmm, See, that's what he's bringing us to.
Yes.
Yeah.
We don't find it from praying to some far-off entity in another realm. Yeah.
That's right. See, because even we're saying this, the Merton talk, too, that Merton says it's important, very helpful to know that when we die, we don't go anywhere, like orbit the earth a few times and take off. In God, we live and move and have our being. We're living our life in the vast interiority of God. So all the angels are here, all the dead are here, the eternal life of the dead are here. And we'll be joining them soon enough. Even before we die, we can, in these interior meditative, love-infused states, realize this interiority of what's unexplainably sacred and present, and presencing itself as our very presence. The presence of the sun moving across the sky, the passage of time. It's like that. Turning to the mystics, we'll continue in a moment.
Ready to deepen your journey with the mystics? Following the Mystics Through the Narrow Gate is a transformative teaching featuring James Finley and Richard Rohr, offering profound insights into the mystical path. For a limited time, podcast listeners can access this inspiring series at 50% off. Use the offer code PODCAST50 at checkout. Let the mystics guide you into greater wisdom and love. Learn more at cac.org/mystics. That's cac.org/mystics. This Lent, join our free virtual sit meditations inspired by Richard Rohr's new book, The Tears of Things. Enter contemplative stillness in a shared online space every Sunday during Lent. Father Richard leads the first sit on March 9th at 8:30 a.m. Pacific. Prepare for each practice with our free Lenten email series. Learn more at cac.org/Lent-sits. That's cac.org/LENT-SITS.
Okay, I'm going to try and tackle the realm of mystery with you.
All
And
right.
so this idea that you pointed out, that the realm of mystery, as a human, we're asking what it means to be human. It's consciousness asking about consciousness, and that leaves us in the realm of mystery. And these are my words, so tell me how this sounds, but it's something I can't get outside of. So I can't kind of get outside of the fact that I'm existing in my human self. I can't get outside of my own consciousness and view it from afar.
That's right.
And is that what puts it into the realm of mystery?
Yes, that'd be a good way to put it, really. See, I can't get outside of it because my very self is the immediate manifested presence of the boundaryless interiority that alone is real. You can't say over here is reality, and let's step outside of reality to take a look at reality. You can't get outside of reality because it's always within reality we're exploring reality. And that's the intimacy of the mystery of that evokes wonder or presence and so on.
And that's a key point you just made. So I can feel that in my own kind of personal subjective experience, like you say, that you were talking about earlier. Subjectively, I can see I can't get outside myself or outside my consciousness, but that leads me into this, I can't get outside of reality, and within the entirety of reality, I'm a part of it, I'm one with it.
That's right. Here's another way, too, that I think has helped me to see this, put it this way about Marcel. This is true of all the mystics. And when I speak of myself, we spoke of this before in previous sessions. When I speak of myself, there's the self of myself. I say I'm worried about myself. I'm proud of myself. I'm ashamed of myself. Of who I am in my own reflective consciousness. But then if I ask if that's the self of myself, the self that I see, what's the my of myself? Who's the me who sees me? At its first levels, the my of myself is the internalized self of myself. I internalize experiences, I internalize answers, and I project them at a certain level. That's how the ego works. But in deep meditative states, in the quietness of these moments, in deep meditative states, the my of myself becomes more and more non-distinguished from the infinity of the infinite self of God, infinitely presencing and giving itself to me as the mystery of the my of myself. And that trans-subjective communion for Marcel, that's reality. And then there's another big thing about Marcel. What he's trying to do, the wisdom path. He said, Marcel Stahl Gallagher says, is very Augustinian, that I might know myself in thee, O Lord, only this and nothing more, absolutely nothing more. That God has made our hearts in such a way that nothing less than an infinite union with the infinite love will ever be enough to put to rest the restless longings of our heart. It's a setup. That our suffering is we're trapped in the problematic. We're trapped in a claustrophobic, one-dimensional thing where we believe, and this is reactivity, that the outcome of the situation has the authority to name who I am. And so he's trying to heal us. There's like a constellation of philosophy. He's trying to bring us to this healing of being habitually stabilized in this boundarylessness of the mystery and beauty of ourself, of everyone. Really, is manifested presences of the infinite presence of being of God.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's helpful. And I think, Jim, you said despair arises when we remain in the realm of the problematic.
Yes. See, because if I'm nothing but the self things happen to, so I'm going to go St. Augustine again. He said, wisdom consists of understanding in what true happiness consists and how to find it. It's wisdom. And then he concludes that in order, therefore, for true happiness to be true happiness, it has to be eternal. Because if the only happiness I have is the happiness that ends in the fleetingness of my life and death, my happiness is always fragile and temporary, and that's not true happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what Marcel is trying to do here. He's trying to find our way to a state of interior, intuitive realizations or intimations of an eternal, boundaryless presence. This presencing itself is the mystery of our very presence, realizing these different modalities in nature and intimacy and solitude and silence and beauty and service and so on. Salvation, salvific knowledge. Yeah.
Jim, I want to come back to this word transsubjective. What Marcel's pointing to is this transsubjective experience, just like the realm of the problematic, which is real in its own right and important in its own right. There's the realm of the objective and even the subjective, the realm of the subjective, which is real in its own right and really important. So we're not trying to override the ego and subjective experience. We're just saying there's something deeper that gives our life meaning and purpose and takes us out of realms of despair because it's infinite and eternal.
Yeah, this is another big insight here, which is key to all the mystics too, and faith and so on, is that in the problematic order, there is the reality of me in a relationship with that which is not me. I'm not my car because it won't start. I'm not the roof that's leaking and so on. And that's real. See? But Romano Guardini, the Catholic writer Romano Guardini, has a succinct way of saying it. I'm not any of you, but neither am I dualistically other than any of you either. I'm not the earth, I'm not, but neither am I dualistically other than the earth either. And I'm not God, but neither am I dualistically other than God. I'm subsisting like light subsists in flame in the transsubjective unity of intimately realized reality. Cardinal Newman says, I'm a link in a chain. I cannot be thrown away. I'm woven into the interconnectedness that's ultimately infinite, woven into us. And that's transsubjectivity.
Wonderful. By season 11, we might be getting a little closer to understanding transsubjective reality.
Yeah. I think we're getting closer to realizing the folly of figuring it out.
Yeah.
But we're getting closer, although we can't figure it out. We're so grateful for the intimations of putting words to what we're resting in.
Yeah.
You know, that's what's, I think, the value of these reflections. Yeah.
And Marcel gives us a beautiful lens to talk about this transsubjective experience, and he talks about the I-thou experience. And so, Jim, maybe you'll expand on that a little bit.
So the example that we use, we'll expand on it now, this will be repeated to fidelity, hope, and love to kind of as an habitual state. The example that we use is that when we love someone, this is the key, is who we know someone to be when we love them. So when we love them, we do know in the problematic order what's factually true about them, what they look like, what their history is because they told us, what their personality is, all that's real. But who we know them to be in our love for them is thou. And here he's echoing Martin Buber, the Jewish mystic and philosopher, I, it, and I, thou. So it's true that the beloved is it. That is, there's the factual realities and facts of the father, mother, sister, brother, lover, spouse, friend, grandparents, whatever. But who we know them as thou fills the entire horizon of our being. And Marcel says the response isn't explaining anything. He says we're just moved in love. What we say is, be with me. And what we see really, another way of looking at it, is we see the presence of the beloved is an incarnate, manifested presence of the infinite presence of God, manifesting itself as the presence of the beloved, as thou. That the beloved, through the generosity of God, is worth all that God is worth. In the beloved's nothingness without God, it quietly, unexplainably shines this way, thou. Then Marcel says, it isn't possible to be one with the thou of the other without realizing that you're also one with the thou of yourself. because it's only the thou in you that can see the thou of the other. And the next level is that when the beloved sees that you're seeing them in this way, you reveal them to themselves as thou. And then when they return the favor and you realize that your thou's thou, see, you got something. So what if then, this is mystical marriage, and we talk about the thou dimensions of all of reality, really. The thou of silence, the thou of an animal, the thou of life, the thou of flowers, of art, the thou. That we realize each unto each, like unto one another. We realize then this is the truth of ourselves, and then we're called to live by it. This is what we're getting at on the path. It comes to us as a moment. So it's a moment. T.S. Eliot was talking about this too, about time and eternity. So there's a certain timeless moment of the realization of thou. But the timeless moment of tasting thou, transcending time, must be carried out and lived in time. Otherwise, it's just a fleeting moment. See, and that's the real question. See, how do I transcend the moment where I transcend time? How can I habitually be established in the moment that transcends time through all the time of my life? And it's like a call. And this is where Marcel is headed. This is the path of how do we go about living like this, becoming such a person?
Very reminiscent, what you were just saying then, of T.S. Eliot's line, which I've carried forward from season 10, only in time is time conquered.
That's right. So he said that this is so Marcellian too. See? So there are certain moments, remember in T.S. Eliot, to be conscious is not to be in time. And then he gives very stunningly simple examples. Like it starts to rain and you run under a grape arbor and there's huge drops of water hitting on the leaves overhead, or being in a drafty church of smokefall. There's certain hallowed moments of pausing in a certain effulgence or unexplainable fullness this way. But then they tend to be elusive. That is, the cell phone goes off. We're already late for the next meeting. You know what life is like. So then the question is, well, how then, since we can't make these moments happen, how do we do this? And this is where he gets into, so you find your practice and practice it. There's the daily rendezvous of a quiet fidelity where there's no agenda but this. And by the way, then, when we read Marcel's Lectio Divina, sitting with Marcel is the rendezvous. We're in the rendezvous right now. So as you sit with it and internalize it and walk with it, as you end each rendezvous, each time of the Lectio, how can I carry forward into the task of the day an underlying habitual sensitivity to this depth dimension that transcends the task at hand, yet in some way is incarnate in the task at hand? Like it matters. Not at the level the ego thinks, like how does it turn out? But it matters as an incarnate immediacy of the life that I'm living. It's due to a certain kind of reverential respect.
And I'm sure you're going to go deeper into this in future sessions, but just to hearing you say that has helped me understand that what Marcel's talking about in the I-thou relationship doesn't stay in the realm of human to human. It expands out into human to tree, human to dog, human
That's right.
to, yeah,
That's right.
it's the whole cosmos.
That's right. It's the transsubjective communion of us. But the us that's realized in the transsubjective moment is not reducible to us. In some way includes everyone. And Jesus would say even includes our enemies. It includes all of humanity. See, that's why I say that each of us is a unique edition of the universal story of being a human being. And this story of being a human being is the realization of the all-inclusive togetherness in which we're all one with each other in the lives that we're living as human beings. And this has opened itself to the mystery of God. It's giving itself and presencing itself as our presence to each other. This is where Marcel is headed.
And am I right in saying, Jim, too, it would expand out to like my relationship with a tree? I can have a relationship with a tree in the realm of the problematic, but I can also see the thou of the tree.
That's right. Carl Jung says, how can we claim the years have taught us anything if we haven't learned to listen to the secret that whispers in the brooks? And that's the thou dimension of the sound of water, where you look up into the sky at night, see the thou dimension of this, the thou dimension of our own breathing, the passage of time. In some sense, God's the infinity of the concrete immediacy of everything.
Yes.
And the concrete immediacy of everything is the concrete immediacy of the presence of God, presencing itself as the concrete. And he's trying to stay with us long enough till it starts soaking in and becomes more and more, because we're longing for it. And when we hear this kind of talk, we sense that it's beautiful. And in our heart, we know it's beautiful because it's true. And we're trying to be more habitually stabilized in it. So by living by it, we might become someone in whose presence others are better able to sense, like we pass on the contagious energy of this transsubjective togetherness. It's ultimately divine, really.
So, Jim, if I'm hearing you correctly, that we can enter a state of consciousness where it's more I, it, and that's more the realm of the problematic. It's the objective or the subjective, the I, it realm. And then there's the I, thou realm, which is the realm of mystery. And it's, the realm that we can't analyze and solve and cling to. And it's the realm that we find in this stance of listening that Marcel describes.
You're hitting on something I think is also helpful. See, the I-it consciousness is necessary to carry out a task. It's detailed. It requires a certain skill set, like producing these talks, getting ready for the talk. It's important. But the point is, the underlying intention of doing it is the mystery of it. That is, we don't get split off and exiled from the mind. In other words, the non-dual, the transsubjective oneness, the non-dual is not dualistically other than the dual. It's the infinite ground of the dual itself. And therefore, it matters that we engage in the task at hand wholeheartedly, engaged in it with an underlying understanding that this too is woven in to the mystery. Because I'm doing this for the service of people. I mean, I'm doing it, I'm living my life.
And Marcel's really thought that the crisis of our age was the loss of that grounding.
That's right. He did. Martin Heidegger says we've fallen out of being. That the power of science, the power of what can be proved and demonstrated, how it's transformed the world from medicine, mental health, everything. But we've been so taken by what technology has achieved. We've lost experiential contact with the interior depth dimensions of presence. So he's trying to say not to dispel science. We want science. It's part of the gift. But how to ground science itself in this presence.
Jim, before we close today, I thought what might be helpful would be to go through the chapter titles of the first 4 chapters of Kenneth Gallagher's book, The Philosophy of Gabriel Marcel, because those 4 chapters seem to really encapsulate Marcel's vision aspects. And then chapter 5, he starts to turn towards the path aspects. So let's just go through each chapter one by one. I'll give the name of the chapter and we can talk about the vision aspect that shines through the title.
Yeah, that's helpful. That's good.
So the first chapter is called The Winding Path. And my understanding is he's talking about life and the way it weaves in and out of these kind of experiences.
Yes. In other words, the winding path is not just how we wend our way from one circumstance to another. And I mean, there is that. But the winding path is that as our life moves from one way to another, the winding path brings us to these moments of the depth dimension of thou. And then the winding path also consists, as the thou moment passes, the cumulative effect of those thou moments starts stirring with the desire to abide in the depth of the moment, because we intuit that in these grace thou transsubjective moments, it isn't that something more is given, but a curtain parts and the divinity of every moment is laid bare, including this moment. So how can I be healed from what exiles me from this depth dimension of every moment of my life? And that's the winding path.
And you've said many times, Jim, that it's not linear, this path that you're talking about. And so I love the way he articulates it as the winding path. Yeah.
Another way I put it too, this is so true when you look at it too. When I say that sometimes when we're quite young, we're graced with an awakening we spend the rest of our life learning to be faithful to. That is, that developmentally, say as a child, for example, if it happens or whenever it happens, you're quickened with an awareness, and you're way over your head what you can comprehend. And as you go through your years and develop, you keep trying to grow into something. Not by falsely you can explain it, but how as an adult you can freely choose to be ever more faithful, to keep leaning into what was given to you in all subsequent moments that way. So it's nonlinear in that sense.
There's another thing you teach, Jim, that's I think helpful for the winding path is the way often it's in looking back over our lives. So like these podcasts are an invitation for people to reflect back over their lives and realize moments that they may have had to brush over or they weren't able to deepen in.
That's right. And it was the way it helps me to see this is that for the people who are listening to this, and they're listening to it and they're moved by it, or it helps them. So the question is this for me too, all of us. See, how has it come to pass that you become the man or woman who's even capable of being sensitive to such things? At the level you're able to be sensitive to it. And is it not true that it wasn't always this way with you? Sometimes you can open a book like this, like, what's that mean? You open the same book 10 years later and you have to sit down. It gets to you. And so we're always in this kind of this intermingling, because often it's in hindsight then when we look back, we realize that unbeknownst to us at the time, we were already being initiated into this, but we didn't know it. And little by little by little, it's expectant because there's more ahead.
Yes.
I'm on the learning curve at the unforeseeability where it's going to yield to yet deeper realizations. And this will go on throughout all of eternity.
Mm-hmm. I love thinking of everyone listening and we're all on this winding path, but in this moment we're together, that the paths all link up and we can go a little deeper.
That's exactly right. No.
The second chapter, being in a situation, and it made me think, is he talking about being, like uppercase B, God, in a situation, or is it we're just being in a situation?
That's very good. That's very good. This is what he says in this chapter, and this is when he explores it. See, you're in a situation, I'm in a situation. Like right now, I'm sitting in my living room in Marina Del Rey, speaking like this, and you are in Dorothy, where she is, Vanessa, where she is, and each of the listeners later, when they're listening, they're in the situation they're in as they listen to this, taking a walk or wherever. So we're always in a situation. But the question is this, again, like becoming aware of the quality of our awareness, that ultimately I'm in the situation of being a human being in a world of human beings. That's my situation. And to take it even deeper, my situation is that I'm in the presence of God, presencing itself in and as who I am in the immediacy of this situation. And so being in a situation is being in the situation that I'm here now, lowercase b. But at the same time, that lowercase b is the incarnate manifestation of the higher case b, being in the situation of being the infinity of itself as our being here. And that's being in a situation.
I love it.
Thomas Merton once says, one of his talks, he says, life is 98% Mickey Mouse. And it doesn't help to relocate. Because if you do, you discover Mickey Mouse waiting for you at the airport to show you to your new apartment. He said, the key to life, and this is Marcel, the key to life is finding the kernel of pure truth that's hidden in your present situation and then living by it.
The next chapter is problem and mystery, and we touched on that quite a lot in this dialogue. Yeah. And then chapter 4, ontological exigence.
Yes. The word exigence means necessity. Ontological means being. So it's the necessity of being experientially grounded in being in order to be experientially grounded in the gift and the miracle of being real. Otherwise, I'm reduced to a series of facts. I'm reduced to a series of functions. So that's the necessity. In terms of being in the fullness of life itself, I have to be in this fullness.
And they're really the key themes of the vision for Marcel that we just went through.
That's right.
Gallagher's done a great job of pulling out those key themes. And he refers to the books where Marcel has written more extensively on each of those themes when he quotes from Marcel. Is that right, Jim?
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah. Then chapter 5 is access to being fidelity, hope, and love, which you've talked about as now we're getting into the path aspects, and that's where you're headed.
In other words, if this speaks to us at all, if it touches us, it bears witness we're already on the path of which Marcel speaks. Otherwise, it wouldn't mean anything. So then the question is, yes, I am on this path and I'm touched by it. But what is the way of life that can be ever more deeply, ever more habitually established in this? As a kind of an underlying sensitivity to the divine depth dimension of the incarnate immediacy of every moment of my life. And what is that path? And that's what he explores. And notice that's just what the mystics do. Mm-hmm. They help us to become aware of a quickening of our awareness. Then in the quickening, they become aware of the gift of longing to abide there. And then the mystic says, well, how do we do that? And so this is what Marcel is doing. See, what is the way of life? This path to be ever more transformed, the self-metamorphosizing sensitivity to the divinity of the immediacy of everything.
Well, I look forward to hearing more about that in the coming sessions. Thank you for this beautiful start to Marcel, Jim, and it's been a real joy to dialogue with you about it today. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm grateful we can share it. Yeah.
And then thank you for Corey, Dorothy, and Vanessa in the background. Thank you for listening to this episode of Turning to the Mystics, a podcast created by the Centre for Action and Contemplation. We're planning to do episodes that answer your questions. So if you have a question, please email us at podcasts@cac.org or send us a voicemail. All of this information can be found in the show notes. We'll see you again soon.
Do you feel called to walk a more contemplative path? The Center for Action and Contemplation is an educational nonprofit supporting the journey of inner transformation. Our programs and resources will help grow your consciousness, deepen your prayer practice, and strengthen your compassionate engagement with the world. Learn more about our resources, such as publications, podcasts, email series, and events at www.cac.org.